Today I want to talk about the Ford Pinto, which is one of, if not the worst cars in history, and one of the most infamous cars ever built. The Ford Pinto was built by Ford Motor Company from 1970 until 1980, and the Pinto is nearly infamous for its numerous design flaws, most notably for the explosive fuel tank, which if it got hit in the back, the car would just literally blow up. And there were numerous design tests that where the test vehicle would hit the Pinto and it would literally catch fire. But the consequences from that would be much, much greater. The While Ford did make a lot of amazing vehicles throughout its history, such as the Mustang, the Ford GT, of course the original GT40, and the original Model T, which made cars just accessible to the middle class rather than just being a car for the wealthy elite. But the Pinto was the image of the Pinto was just nearly just just was very damning to the Ford Motor Company, and it really damaged Ford's reputation. The purpose behind the Ford Pinto was that Ford wanted to create a small car, small compact car that would compete with cars such as the iconic Volkswagen Beetle, which was one of the most popular cars of all time, which sold, I think, like 20 million units in its entire lifetime. So it's definitely one of the most popular cars ever built. And it was also meant to compete with the Chevrolet Vega, and there were other and many Japanese import cars. So Ford really felt that they were under pressure to create a car that would compete in that space. So, and they wanted the car to be made as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, the history of the Pinto, it would cost Ford millions of dollars in lawsuits, and not only their brand image, but unfortunately, it would also lead to some deaths. There is a YouTube video from the Weird History channel on which is on YouTube, and it would talk about the quote explosive, and the title of the video was called "Explosive History of the Ford Pinto," and it talked about the development of the Pinto and how it was made, and the consequences of developing it. Well, one of the problems that the video talked about was that all the parts of the car were developed at the same time, rather than in other cars, the parts would be developed individually, separately, so that they would meet the quality standards. And also, a lot of the parts on the car were used to cut costs. But unfortunately, those parts would make the Ford Pinto infamous. And also, the Weird History Channel talked about how the car was developed in literally 23 to 25 months, rather, which is one of the shortest developments of a car in automotive history, rather than the usual 43 months that it would take to develop an average car. So the short development history would say otherwise. So the question is, how could this have happened? How could a car like the Pinto have been made? How could the how could the problems of the Pinto cause deaths? Well, simply the higher ups at Ford knew about the issues. They knew about the problems. They knew about the problems, but they didn't do anything about it. And Ford workers were scared to tell the bosses about it for fearing that they would get fired. And the explosive fuel tank wouldn't even be known until late until its early development. And also, Ford thought that they could just settle all the law. They had enough money to settle all the lawsuits out of court. But unfortunately, it would be a lot more than they could handle. And the video did talk about some deaths related to the explosive fuel tank. Ford themselves, the video talked about how Ford themselves said it was about 27 deaths, but there were other reports saying that it would be like 180 to 500, which is a huge, huge difference. And there was also a memo released of how many deaths were related to the explosive fuel tank. What I would advise is that when you're developing a car, it has develop each part individually separately so that they're durable, they're capable for everyday use. And also, I would also advise that workers, if there's ever a problem with the car that would cost lives, I mean, sure, it would probably get the fire, but still pressure the higher ups, pressure the bosses to make sure that they acknowledge the issue and get the vehicle fixed so that unfortunately it wouldn't cost many lives.